They did nothing, yet they won. That was the stunned whisper among fans when people first realized just how astonishingly well the PlayStation 5 was faring. Today, many argue that this very success has diminished the once hungry spirit behind Sony's flagship console. But what exactly is going on here? And how does this story of triumph and complacency affect us, the gamers who live for those electrifying all-night gaming sessions? In this deep dive, we will unravel how Sony's unrivaled success might be causing them to rest comfortably on past achievements. Along the way, we will ask whether the PlayStation 5's dizzying triumph in the gaming marketplace has resulted in fewer must-play exclusives, complacent development strategies, and even a subtle disregard for core fans' demands. Get ready, because we are about to take you behind the scenes of a phenomenon that is simultaneously inspiring and alarming. But first, let us travel back to a not-so-distant time. Once upon a console generation, Sony was hungry. The huge crowd pleaser that was the PlayStation 2 catapulted Sony to a new level of global recognition. Back then, they had to hustle for every bit of goodwill. Later, even though the PlayStation 3 was a revered name on the market, it faced a rocky start because of complicated architecture and a lofty price tag. With the PlayStation 4, Sony bounced back with a vengeance, throwing out blockbuster exclusives such as The Last of Us Remastered, God of War, and Horizon Zero Dawn. Fans, journalists, and even rival companies watched in awe as Sony marched confidently toward victory. Now, brace yourself for a significant turn. If we skip over the PlayStation 3, which was the only PlayStation console that did not turn a profit, what remains is a string of platforms that effectively minted money. However, the PlayStation 5 has reportedly been so profitable, more profitable even than the other famously successful Sony consoles combined, that it is earning the brand an unassailable status. The bigger question is, has that unstoppable success lessened the need for Sony to remain engaged with the more dedicated circle of fans? After all, profit numbers indicate they might not have to do much at all. Let us remember that famous remark used in political memes, "Does nothing, wins." Originally, that phrase was pinned on countries like China, observing how they seemingly merely stand by and watch as another global power trips over its own ambitions. A surprising number of commentators believe a similar dynamic is unfolding in the gaming world, except this time with Sony standing by while Microsoft stumbles. Microsoft's pursuit of new hardware iterations, its sometimes unclear marketing, and the difficulties it has faced in building a compelling roster of exclusives all contribute to Sony's triumph, even if Sony does not make dramatic moves of its own. Many core gamers feel that the PlayStation 5 should be brimming with top-notch first-party experiences, especially after the excellence of Sony's internal development teams during the PlayStation 4 era. Yet, that overflowing wave of new software never quite arrived in the way fans might have hoped. Instead, to the dismay of many, Sony seems laser-focused on microtransactions, subscription models such as PlayStation Plus, and broad-appeal third-party titles that rake in massive sums with minimal risk. In short, do less, earn more. It is a surreal but noteworthy shift that leaves many fans uneasy. At the heart of this disquiet lies a new ecosystem that thrives on taking a slice of every digital sale. Remember the days when one had to buy a shiny disc and excitedly load it up on day one? Now, countless gamers purchase expansions, new skins, and all manner of digital accessories for titles including Call of Duty and EA Sports FC. Every time that happens on a PlayStation 5, Sony gets a piece of the revenue. It is a lucrative approach, and it is fueling monstrous profits across the board. The question is, does this reduce the motivation to craft game-changing new exclusives? Even anticipated big-budget single-player releases seem less frequent than fans might want. With every passing season, speculation rises that maybe Sony is quietly reallocating resources toward more profitable, evergreen experiences that offer microtransactions or monthly subscription revenue. That suspicion flared up with the push for so-called live service games, which are designed to endure for much longer than a simple single-player campaign. Yet multiple attempts from Sony to break into that sphere appear to have misfired, generating confusion about the brand's direction. Look at something like Conquered, one of Sony's live service experiments, which never achieved the major buzz that fans of competitive shooters hoped for. The sense that Sony is chasing the pot of gold at the end of the microtransaction rainbow leaves some longtime followers grieving the reduction of what once defined the PlayStation experience. heartfelt single-player epics that set cinematic standards for the entire industry. Yet Sony's stance, from an outsider's view, looks unperturbed. Why should the company fret when so many millions are pouring in from cosmetics, seasonal passes, and ongoing digital subscriptions? The consumer base that primarily indulges in big, mainstream blockbusters is enormous. Even if a fraction of those players buy an extra digital outfit or a booster that speeds up their progression, multiplied across an active user base that dwarfs rivals, Sony's revenue swells beyond even their own historic benchmarks. Nevertheless, there are glimmers of hope for those craving the quintessential single-player masterpiece. Take the rumored Ghost of Yotei, believed to be a spectacular sequel or spin-off from Sucker Punch Productions, the same crew behind Ghost of Tsushima. Whispers abound that it will feature an upgraded combat system, breathtaking open-world design, and emotionally impactful storytelling. For some, this project is evidence that Sony still invests in the grand, narrative-driven adventures that once enthralled loyal fans. But critics wonder if this is the exception that proves the rule, that with the mesmerizing success of the PlayStation 5 in the mainstream market, Sony only needs a handful of such prestige titles per generation to maintain the veneer of being an industry leader in high-quality games. If all this talk of big profits, complacency, and an uncertain future resonates with you, let me know by showing a little support. Give this video a like, because every bit of engagement helps us continue pulling back the curtain on these industry secrets. We should remember that competition in gaming once felt like a fiery race, with Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo locked in a dramatic contest of wits. But with the Switch leaning more into its signature family-friendly exclusives, Microsoft struggling to settle on a consistent strategy for the Xbox brand, and Sony reaping rewards simply by staying relatively quiet, the present landscape feels lopsided. The average consumer, confronted by shelves packed with hardware, might simply reason that the PlayStation 5 is the biggest and flashiest device to own if they covet those perfectly rendered third-party juggernauts like Call of Duty or EA Sports FC. That sense of inevitability is what troubles some analysts. What happens to our beloved industry if one party becomes so dominant that it neglects courting smaller audiences or taking risks on unproven ideas? Some point to the stumbles around Concord and other ephemeral live service attempts as proof that Sony is, ironically, less apt at pivoting than many believe. After all, being complacent can be dangerous. One day, the unstoppable juggernaut might get blindsided by a competitor's well-crafted product or bold new business model, shaking everything up again. Yet, in the here and now, Sony has discovered an approach that seems unstoppable. Many gamers just want to hop online, shoot some digital adversaries, or manage their dream soccer team. They probably do not care about meticulously crafted single-player narratives or the existential dread of a branching storyline. Perhaps the reason Sony's first-party efforts have taken a backseat has less to do with disinterest and more to do with the reality that the mainstream gamers whose spending dwarfs that of many hardcore fans want something else entirely. For those who yearn for the adrenaline of a Shadow of the Colossus-like epic or the nuanced storytelling of a The Last of Us-style narrative, the situation can feel disheartening. But hey, it seems Sony has concluded that those fans, while passionate, are not as lucrative as the broad pool of online enthusiasts who live for that next seasonal event or limited-time digital item. The phenomenon of paying for purely cosmetic items, once ridiculed by gamers as a cynical cash grab, is now a standard method of self-expression in the gaming community. Meanwhile, Microsoft has made some bold moves in acquiring studios and pushing subscription models like Game Pass. That strategy has captured the loyalty of certain fans, but the mainstream wave that sweeps up the Call of Duty crowd still largely chooses PlayStation hardware for its lack of fuss and brand familiarity. Sony can bank on that, which, ironically, might confirm the old meme, does nothing, wins. In a sense, though, Sony is doing plenty, just behind the scenes. The brilliant architects of the PlayStation ecosystem refined a feedback loop where microtransactions, subscriptions, and brand prestige feed upon themselves. The number of players who see PlayStation 5 as synonymous with serious gaming is enormous, and once a brand cements that perception in the public mind, it is incredibly tough to uproot. This dynamic also explains the fever pitch mania that arises over Sony's next big console reveal or hardware revision. Even if those reveals sometimes come across as ambiguous or lacking in revolutionary changes, the community reacts with fervent speculation and hype. Then, when Microsoft tries a more forthright or experimental approach, the messaging occasionally stumbles, overshadowed by a rumor or half-baked hardware detail. The public ends up making a beeline back to Sony's more secure playing approach. Beneath the surface, enthusiasts who have played on Sony consoles since they were children in the days of the original machine might wonder whether the flame of innovation has dimmed. Sure, there are occasional bright spots that remind us of Sony's old magic, the unstoppable hype around any new God of War installment, for instance. But there is little question that the volume of single-player blockbusters is not as vast as it once was. The fact that Sony barely discusses this phenomenon suggests that they simply do not need to. Why blow the lid off corporate strategies if all is going well? And so, we find ourselves teetering between admiration and frustration. Admiration because Sony soared to the top of the console hierarchy with the PlayStation 5, surpassing anything that came before. Frustration because success might have bred an environment that is more interested in chasing the casual crowd's spending than fueling the artistic spark that made older generations so beloved. That said, do not think for a minute that story-driven experiences are dead. Look at the rumored new single-player sagas in development, or at the unstoppable momentum behind a game like Marvel's Spider-Man 2. These are the showpiece titles that keep Sony in the critical spotlight. There is no reason to panic that these experiences will vanish entirely, but unless a formidable challenger emerges, or a wave of consumer sentiment demands more, we can't expect Sony's strategic priority to remain what it has become. Keep the money flowing, and do not rock the boat. If you are intrigued by these behind-the-scenes twists and turns, how about you consider subscribing to stay in the loop? We will keep on spotlighting the shifting tides of the gaming realm, so stick around for more revelations that just might surprise you. Where does that leave us? In a market that is quietly dominated by the folks who only jump online to blast through the most popular shooters, where skins and digital tokens generate real-world fortunes for Sony, the high-level executives hardly notice when a lesser-known live service project stalls. As long as the microtransaction engine keeps revving at full speed, and the fancy new big-budget releases are spaced out just enough to keep hype alive, Sony remains unstoppable. Whenever we see a single giant overshadowing all competition, we inevitably ask, does it foster a vibrant ecosystem that appreciates variety, or does it lead to a kind of stagnation? On one hand, each time Sony invests in a sprawling single-player adventure, it usually ends up pushing narrative and graphical standards forward. On the other hand, the countless microtransaction-laden games that flood the market are not going away anytime soon. Profit is profit. Thus, the sum total of Sony's situation with the PlayStation 5 is complicated. We have a console that is racing ahead in popularity, generating record-breaking profit, and standing head and shoulders above any direct competitor in the realm of traditional hardware sales. Yet, ironically, this unstoppable success might be the very factor eroding the hunger that once drove groundbreaking creativity. When the brand can earn massive revenue simply by being the default platform for the masses, will it feel obligated to champion bold new experiences? For the moment, that question remains unanswered. Some fans see hope in rumored future single-player blockbusters. Others remain convinced that Sony's expansion into live service gaming means a permanent shift in priorities. Regardless, we are living in a gaming era where "does nothing, wins" might seem less like a sarcastic catchphrase and more like the literal truth for the PlayStation empire. One concludes that only time will reveal the next dramatic twist, perhaps an unexpected competitor or a radical new technology that upends the console market. However, until that day, Sony's measured, minimalistic approach, where minimal hype can yield maximal rewards, is here to stay. Climactic or not, that is our new normal. A powerful brand, a legion of mainstream players enamored with monthly events and digital goodies, and a relatively subdued appetite for pushing boundaries. Yet do not forget that behind every corporate strategy is a human element, a legion of developers who still care about the daring artistry of video games. If enough of them choose to funnel their creative energy into a game that truly captures hearts, we might just see the old spark reignite. Because in the world of entertainment, complacency has a habit of failing swiftly if it does not adapt. And while Sony's unstoppable success looks permanent now, history has shown that fortunes can shift in an instant. In this moment, though, the corporation seems securely on top, anchored by the unstoppable phenomenon that is the PlayStation 5. That unstoppable force, ironically, leads some to wonder whether Sony's golden goose is also its Achilles heel. Would a little healthy adversity drive them to do more than simply watch from the sidelines? Or is the era of minimal efforts and maximal profit destined to continue? For now, place your bets. The monolithic success of the PlayStation brand, fueled by microtransactions and monthly subscriptions, does not appear to be slowing, but keep an eye on those rumblings of change in the distance. One bold competitor or a shift in consumer tastes could upset even this biggest of giants. Until that day, we simply watch, wait, and see when Sony's unstoppable success might shake them from their comfortable throne.